tonight we have the basic fundamentals of campaigning, organizing, and organizing volunteers, how to get endorsements, and how to just do the very best you can to entice people to help you and want you to be whatever it is you're running for. And I have to run again. So I'm going to learn myself tonight. So then we also have a recently elected official who will share my life as a candidate to tell you just how it was. So then, at the end of the session, I want you to be really just, ready to party, because we're going to have a graduation ceremony for the people who attended all of the seminars, and you will get an actual certificate, signed, sealed, and everything, and we will also be having chocolate cake and champagne, so please don't go, okay? That's great. So before we begin, I want to thank the program committee for putting this on. That includes Barbara Matas, who's going to come and introduce. Our master chef, Christina Waldeck. Oh my God. So good. Laurel, where are you, Laurel? Oh, well, she's probably listening. There you are. Good. Laurel Druk and Wendy. Wendy, where are you? There she is in the back. Susanna and Tammy. Susanna, where are you? You're going to be speaking tonight. Susanna, thank you. And then Tammy. There she is. If I have skipped someone, please forgive me, and Gina, there you are. Gina, sorry. I didn't see you, so I didn't call your name first. Gina is our institutional history and does everything with us. So, all right, so now I just want to remind you of one thing. The next event for our Women's PAC is the holiday party. One you won't want to miss. It also includes elections of the upcoming slate of officers for next year. And so be sure you're on our mailing list. You can talk to any one of the people that I just named. If you're not, it will be held on the 8th of December at the Best Western Hotel in Corte Madera.
Right off the freeway.
So, right off the freeway. And it's, yes, so be sure you're on our email list, because it's going to be a real blast. We have a lot of fun, including, again, I think we're going to have wonderful food and possibly singing.
We'll have
right?
A live musician, live music, wonderful guitarist, so we'll party.
That's great.
After the election.
Okay, so now, with no further ado, I would like to present Barbara Matas, who is going to lead our program tonight. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here.
So I think one of the most anxiety-provoking portions of running a campaign is getting your endorsements. They're so important, and it's a way for you to be known by people whose hands you are unable to shake. So tonight we have 3 folks who have some of the most important endorsements in the county. The first person speaking is Dave Allen from the Marin Independent Journal. People fight over that endorsement. Ken Martin from the IAFF 1775. And people fight with Ken for that endorsement. And then we have Gina Brewer from MWPAC. So if you guys would just, maybe Dave, get started.
Got some handouts here on how to stay in touch with me, so throw these out. It's nice to see all you guys. Thanks. Okay, here you go. Thank you. Well, thanks for having me. This is complete Zoom endorsement meetings, and it's actually worked out pretty well. It is more convenient for people than having to drive up to our office. We also closed our office during the pandemic. We have a much smaller one now out at Shoreline Parkway, and there's still a nice conference room in there. So we're trying to figure out if there's a way that we can still do it, especially for like really local endorsement meetings where there's not too many people and we can get them in. So we'll see how that goes, but that's the plan for now. But the Zooms have been working fine too. But yeah, Barbara asked, how do we go about making the endorsements, and how do we go about setting them up? And you know, the folks on the editorial board don't, it's always different, like what they're looking for, or depending on the race, or what the elected position is. But I mean, there are some basic things that I think everybody looks for and wants to see in a candidate, you know, during our chat, during our discussion, and as we read your materials and all that stuff. So definitely we look to see if you've had elected office experience. And I realize not everybody is kind of coming in with that, and certainly we're looking for new faces too, but we want to know if you've had previous elected experience and how did it go, and what kind of relationship did you have with the IGA and with the public and with your constituents and all that stuff. So we pay attention, and we kind of know that. We see all the letters to the editor. So if you've been in office before, we're familiar with how it's gone. And did you participate in community and town and committees and things like that? How your volunteer work, we want to know about that and how that went and what you were able to get done, and you know, what kind of progress you made while you were working on those committees or in that elected office. So those are things that we're always going to ask about, that we're always going to look for in your materials. And then yeah, what did you learn from those volunteer opportunities too? Like, what kind of connection did you make with the public, or is that what sort of got you to the point where you wanted to run for elected office? And we'll always ask those kind of questions. And definitely we're all pretty familiar, everybody on the editorial board is pretty familiar with the local issues and everything that's going on. Even the small stuff on the school board, well, small, I should say, like the very local is how I should put it. There's nothing small about being on the school board for sure. And our education reporter, Carrie Brenner, you know, we're always in communication with her, and we see her work, and we talk to her about what she's working on next and how things are going. For the most part, though, we keep the newsroom separate from the editorial board, and I should be clear about that. Those are two separate parts of the paper, and that's on purpose. There's the advertising part, there's the newsroom part, and there's the editorial board part. And that way we can keep things separate, and when we make that endorsement, that reporter has nothing to do with it, and that's important too, because they're covering the news from that perspective, and we're doing the opinion page from a different perspective. And but we're going to want to know how familiar you are with the local issues and the issues in your race, the issues on the board or council or commission that you're running for. We're going to want to know how much you know about that and how well you're able to speak about it. And then we're also going to ask like what kinds of other endorsements you've got. We're going to want to see that list. And we've got people who've been around the county for a long time. Brad Breithop's the retired opinion page editor, and he grew up here, he's been here his whole life, and he still serves on the editorial board, and so he's kind of our great institutional history, and he knows exactly what the good ones are. And so he'll keep an eye on it, and we also look to see, you know, our supervisors, you know, people like that endorsing different people, and hopefully they're only endorsing one for the race. Yeah, sure.
Why would it matter when you're endorsing somebody who else is endorsing them?
Oh, just because we think it's important. We want to say, you know, especially if it's like a fire board or something like that. Who else do they think? Do you think is a valuable candidate or a good candidate that way? We want to know. We'll probably have further questions about it. It's not just like a check on a box. We're gonna want to see it, but we want to see who your endorsements are, and I'm being honest that if they're names we recognize and that they're people we trust, then that's going to go farther, right? So, and then yeah, we look to see if you have endorsement from council members in your city, because that's important too. These are the leaders of your community that we talk to the most, that we stay connected with a lot, so that's important. And then we're going to really get into and look at your platforms and see what are you working on, what do you want to have happen if you get into that elective office, and does it make sense to us, and do we think it connects with your constituents the way that, you know, we hear so much from these constituents that we feel like we know them, right? And we know what they want in their elected officials sometimes, and so that's important too. And that's mainly it. Yeah, those are the way we do it, and we get so little time to talk to you, and we like to bounce things off, and it's great to have people in the room, whether it's virtual or actually over at the newspaper, and we try to get as best a sense we can, and then we try to be as fair as we can about it. And you know, we always drop in, you know, little. If we think it's a real close race, we'll say it right off the bat. And if we think there's more good candidates than we're able to endorse, we'll say that too. So And then we've even had situations in the past where we've had, where we haven't felt comfortable endorsing someone for a race, and we've said that too. So things have, we like to keep it loose, and we like to keep it flexible because we understand that every race is different, every candidate's different, and so that's the main thing that we're going for. So thanks, yeah. Oh yeah, go ahead.
My question is, why does the IJ always wait until just before the election to endorse when most people get
Sure.
their ballot a month in advance?
Right.
And the other drawback is that if other nonprofit organizations want to do a scorecard
Yeah.
of endorsements, we can't because we have to have those printed in their hands without your information.
Yeah, there's a couple reasons. You know, there's so many races across the county, right? So we are pretty busy, small staff, so I'm constantly working with the candidates to find a time and place when we can get it done. And then also working with the editorial board, people who have full-time jobs doing these other things, right? And I'm asking for their time to sit in these rooms and to go through it. So things can get busy and stuff stacks up. I mean, in 2022, we had one of the elections that was 44 races or something like that. And we have 4 editorials a week on average, sometimes 3, sometimes 5. But so you can see how it starts to get problematic where we're I mean, when are the candidates even on the, when does it close? It closes
In January.
right. So I immediately that next day I do start trying to contact people and line them all up, and it, you know, we can only meet maybe we can't do it 5 days a week. We hold these meetings, right? So if there are 44 races, we're going to have 2 or 3 meetings a week with these candidates, assuming that they're all available. So I hear you. Also, the ballot mailing is sort of a recent phenomenon, right? Where most people are voting that way. And so before we used to try to all get them in just before election day. That was the plan, knowing that the majority of the people were going to be voting on election day. But that has changed. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to adjust to it. And we've heard the feedback before, and so there's no waiting anymore. It's as soon as those names come out from the election office, I start working on it.
So for these candidates here in this room, would it be advisable for them to contact you?
Yes, and that's what these handouts are. That's give me the if you know you're running for office, might as well get me your name and the information now, because I've got a master list going already. You know, right now it's just Huffman's race, but I want to get it much longer. So please contact me right away if you know you're running for a particular office, and that way, as soon as everything's official, I can start trying to get you on a Zoom or in a room so we can talk about it. Yeah, there were other questions. Yes, go ahead.
Letters to the editor.
Uh-huh.
I've heard different theories that if a candidate has more letters to the editor, you know, for them, you know, whatever, that tends to sway the editorial board to endorse them.
Oh, no, that's not true. But the letters to the editor thing is not true. But we do encourage everyone to ask their supporters to write letters to the editor. The candidates themselves, I should have mentioned this earlier, if you would like to try to get a Marin Voice op-ed in that sort of talks about your platform and talks about what's important to your community and to what you want to do coming up, I would love to take them. We do cut it off. I believe it's 2 months before the election because it gets out of hand. So candidates are invited to write those in, and then once after that, then I'm just encouraging everyone to tell their supporters to write letters to the editor, because we get extra space in the paper, and we print tons of them online as well, and people seem to read them. I mean, we get a good readership online from all these letters to the editor. I mean, yes, everyone on the editorial board reads the editorial page, so we're aware that someone's maybe getting more letters than someone else, but it wouldn't be part of something we discuss as the endorsement process goes along. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave, so much.
Okay, thank you.
They know you.
Yes, exactly. I'm sorry, I'm not as organized as Dave. Dave, it was nice to meet you. I've never met you before. I usually stand up here with Brad, and things have been different each year, whether it's going to be Brad and I going question to question or comparing how we each do it. So I didn't bring a set of notes, so please, at any time you feel like you need to jump in and ask questions, feel free to jump in and ask questions. Unlike the IJ, we are a union endorsing group, okay? We are a job-specific endorsement group. So the IJ looks at a overall general picture. And quite often what we look for are very different. And so when you come in, when you go to the IJ, there's things you need to know about. When you come in and talk to a labor group, whether it's my group or it's a different labor group, I see Maddie's here from the North Bay Labor Council, we work close together. Know what you're talking about, okay? Don't come in to the firefighter's interview or the labor group or the IJ, I mean, whoever the group is. Recognize that when you're coming into my group, you're coming into a special interest, all right? If you can't tell me how many fire stations you have in your town, why should my organization support you? Because you know nothing about us and what our desires, what our needs are. Okay? And that's what an endorsement is about. Whether it's my endorsement, being the firefighters, whether it's the IJ's endorsement, whether it's the North Bay Labor Council's. If you come into my endorsement and tell me as a school board member, all the great things about the school, that's great. That's great. I'm really happy for you. And we endorse in the school board, so don't think that we're not looking forward to school board members talking to us, okay? But there's a lot of things that can be happening in the schools that support the fire department, okay? The Fire Foundry, where we're taking junior high school and high school students and trying to bring them to learn about the fire service, okay? What's your involvement in the Fire Foundry? What's your involvement in bringing those students of our community into my organization? Because one of the worst things that's happening in the fire service today is a severe hiring shortage. I have members who are having to work 1,500 hours a year of overtime. And when you put that into a 40-hour work week, they're working 7 days a week, 10 hours a day because of the staffing shortages we're seeing. Okay? So, just as an example, if you're a school board member, I want to hear how you're doing that, how you're helping with that. Just as I want to hear how you're helping as a city administrator or a city council person, a district board member. What are you doing to support our needs? Because we are a special interest group. And it's just, you know, plain and simple, that's what we are. So our endorsement process is similar to the IJ's, only a lot more structured and a lot faster, okay? Mail-out ballots go out on February 5th. I just looked on the election page. The election's over by February 20th, okay? As Dave mentioned, it's all mail-in ballot now, okay? Those things come in. You should hopefully vote as quick as you can. Sometimes we wait, but typically the majority of that election has happened 15 days later. I don't bother to do mail drops, door hangers, or anything 15 days before the election date because it's over. They've made their minds up. Okay, my job is to get you to vote, or the person, your constituent, to vote early and for you before anybody else can change their mind. Okay, so close the file is the latter part of December. By January 5th, I want to be done with all of our interviews. We'll go 5 days a week, as many days as we have to. We rent an office space from SEIU over off McGinnis in North San Rafael. And we try to book 45 minutes for the person with an additional 15 minutes for us to talk. I have a member of my board who likes to pontificate, so sometimes they go an hour and a half. Sometimes we're able to keep them a little bit shorter. But figure you're going to be with us for 45 minutes. And a lot of my questions are going to be structured more along the education route than it is about, it's your candidacy, but educating you on our issues, okay? Pensions, because it's a favorite topic of the IJ in their interviews, pensions, okay? What do you know about a pension? If you're a elected official, whether it's a school board member, a city council member, a fire district member, right on up the line, Did it with Damon in the assembly, you know, do it with Jared in Congress. What do you know about it? Because you're going to be making decisions about it. And I'm not going to expect you to come in and tell me that our pension is the greatest thing in the world and you've got to do everything to fight for it without being able to explain it to me. Right? I don't want you to tell me what you think I want to hear. I want to know what you know about it. And if we need to take a little bit of extra time and help educate you on it, we're going to do that. All right? And on the pension issue, I will tell you, we had a candidate 2 cycles ago who told us everything we wanted to hear about the pension. And she got our endorsement. And she turned around and told the IJ everything the IJ wanted to hear about our pensions. Which was a whole different thing than what we wanted to hear. Patty and I had to pull her endorsement. Not because she didn't look at our pensions the way we wanted her to, but we caught her in a lie. And as a candidate, if you're going to lie, you aren't going to make it. Okay? You might get that first election, but you're not going to continue to make it. Okay? So what you can't do is don't lie to make me happy, and don't lie to make that man happy. Be honest, be yourself, know your subject matter, and be prepared to defend it. Right? If you come in and tell me I'm wrong on something, but you can prove that I'm wrong, or you can defend yourself correctly, that's what I want. Because on the issues that are important to me, if I can convince you that they're important to me, then I know I have a warrior who's going to stand for me and stand strong. And when I say me, I mean my group. I say me a lot as I'm sitting up here. And I can tell you, this is my last time. So Ryan's in the back taking the class. He's taking over for me for the firefighters. So you'll have to deal with Ryan in the future on it.
Don't go.
Okay. But so it's really important when you come into your interview with whoever you're looking for, whoever's endorsement you're seeking, to know the subject matter of those people, but to be yourself and to be honest as you talk about it. And if you don't know, don't be afraid to say, I don't know. Because getting caught in a lie or saying things to appease people catches up with you. Right? You asked the question, why do the endorsements matter?
Well, my question was, why, I would assume that you're going to endorse the person that you independently think is the best candidate, not who somebody else said they thought was the best candidate.
You're right on that, except for when I know that there's an individual out there who thinks that the best fire service is delivered by volunteers, and we shouldn't have paid firefighters sitting on fire engines, and they're your top endorsement. That's put you behind the 8 ball. Okay, because you're going to have to defend that now. And when you tell me I didn't know about that, now I have to wonder why. Right? So we look at those endorsements, like Dave said, and those endorsements can lead to questions. And they can, take you deeper and deeper. And that's why our endorsement interviews, we only have 10 questions. But those 10 questions can take an hour. Easily. Sometimes longer. Because as we go through it, they're going to lead to more, and it's going to, like I said, a lot of times, for those who've been through it, know that it becomes, in a lot of ways, kind of an education. An education on what our issues are. And we're hoping that you'll be able to carry that message as you go forward. So, I don't want to get the hook. I see Barbara doing it. So, just to give you a little bit of information on our endorsement, because we are who we are, the last couple of years, because of the way COVID's worked, because of the requirements of overtime with people, we have put money into campaigns. And so, just so people know, we're changing that this year. Okay, we're putting the onus back on our firefighters to become part of our political action. So when you get the endorsement of the firefighters, number one, we have access to a print shop, our union print shop. We get our discounts. We take care of all the printing that we're going to want with our name on it. We're having a candidate that we endorsed last year. He put 3 pieces of mail out. We gave him money instead of control. All 3 times he got our name on. Okay? Yeah. Big mistake. Okay? Big mistake. All right? So, we're taking back control of our message. We've hired someone to handle our messaging. If we endorse you, if we're going to, if it's school board, we have tiers. We do a name. We recognize the value of our name. If you need money, we've usually limited to $1,000 or $1,500. We've gone over. We've put as much as $5,000 into campaigns. We're going back to doing our piece. Our piece. We'll do our piece. We'll put our boots on the ground. We'll walk your areas, and we'll make sure that we do everything we can to make sure you win. We have, through our program, school board members especially cannot afford to have a campaign manager. Okay, school boards, small districts, things like that. It's hard to put together a campaign manager, right? So myself, I've been through training on it. Ryan's about to start with it. We can run a campaign. And if we have a campaign, a person who's running for one of those offices that can't afford that kind of stuff, we can take care of it. We can provide the walk list. We can provide the mail pieces. And if you have the money, I mean, we can put together a package. This package right here is a $30,000 package. It handles your logo design, t-shirts, 750 lawn signs, which I hate. When you come in and tell me about how many lawn signs you're gonna get and want, I'm gonna tell you, okay, you're already off on the wrong track, right? Because you'll never find a person who's won a campaign with just lawn signs, but you can find a lot of them who won campaigns and never had a lawn sign. Lawn signs don't vote, okay? It's all about touches to the people. You got to get out there 3 times, you have to touch them 3 times. That used to be it. I'd venture to say 5 to 7 these days, okay? So you get out there 5 to 7 times of talking to a person, okay? All right, that's the big piece. We do door hangers. Difference between a piece of door hanger and a piece of mail for you, which we do. The mail, you pick up your mail, you walk to the garbage can and you go, add, political piece, political piece, political piece. Well, I've got that 2 seconds to catch it as it went like that, where it said, see my name. If I put it on your door, I've got 5 seconds. I got 5 to 7 seconds from you to walk. You have to walk from your door all the way to the garbage can. But that's the realities of it. That's how it is. I mean, that's the reality. So I know that if I can put firefighters on the street, putting a piece of door hanger on a person's door, and I can do that 3 to 5 times, I know that I've done everything I can in giving you your best chance to win. And that's what comes with our endorsement. Our endorsement is we are bought into your campaign. And when you go out and seek your endorsements, remember, you're interviewing them too, okay? They're not just interviewing you. Why do you want their endorsement, and what are they going to do for you? And don't be afraid to ask. Did I forget anything?
And I have been working on endorsements for many, many years. And basically the way we do it is, once we know who the candidates are, we send out a questionnaire. It's a 4-page questionnaire to all the candidates for the races that we're covering. We don't cover every race. And then we hope that we will hear back from the candidates with a response. And we get a lot of responses, not everybody. One of the key issues in our organization is choice. It's one of the questions that we ask, are you pro-choice? And there is an answer that, well, personally I'm not, but I wouldn't, I know it's legal and I would not vote against it in a situation. Or some people say, well, my job has something to do with that. Well, we still want to know what your stand is on that particular issue. But a lot of other issues that you would expect a woman's political organization to ask about. And so it takes some time for people to fill it out and send it in. And I would have copies for everybody, but I got a new computer and somehow I couldn't find the questionnaire on my computer because they did things differently. So if we have your email address, I will get a copy of the questionnaire and send it out to you so you can see. It's a lot of work, frankly. So what we do is we have a endorsement meeting, and if there's a lot of races, we'll probably have 2 endorsement nights. And we invite people that we vet their questionnaires, and if they look like they're our kind of candidate, we will invite them to the endorsement night. And it's usually been in person, although we did do a webinar maybe last year. It was very efficient because we didn't have to wait for people to walk up and get settled in the fiddle with the microphone and all that type of thing. But we obviously prefer to meet people in person. The thing is that if you've been invited, we know where you stand on our issues, and we don't really need to hear too much about that in your presentation. We do ask questions about what's going on in your community or district. We have a panel of people who ask the questions, and we take questions from the audience too, written questions. So we give everybody a chance to talk. We do include men, and we do vote for men. We do not use the term endorse for men. We use the term recommend. Since we are a women's organization, but we do recommend male candidates, especially in races where, for example, if there are 3 seats and only 2 women candidates, and there's a 3rd seat, we will recommend a male candidate if there's one that we like. And not just because he's a man, but because we like what he says. So basically, we already know a lot about you when you show up because of the questionnaires. So like I said, we also want to know what you're doing in your community and in your race. So that, because that's really important. There are some people who just don't make the cut, but usually they don't even try, if they're not. But in Marin, Marin is pretty, as you all probably know, it's not the hardest sell to do things our way. But for example, the assembly race back when, is it assembly? Anyway, there was one where the district went all the way up to the border, and the people in far northern California are a different group. And we had a few little misunderstandings there with people up in that neck of the woods. But for most Marin races, everybody's more or less on the same page, but there are a few people that, for whatever reason, choose not to participate. We do vote. When we have these endorsement meetings, we have our members there. So the members have to vote, so there has to be a certain number. 51% of the people who vote in a particular race are required so that we can say, yes, we're going to endorse you. 51%. We also, after we've had all the candidates for the various races speak, we adjourn and we ask the candidates to leave, and we have what we call a caucus. And members in the audience can speak about a candidate. For example, maybe they know somebody that they've worked with, and maybe it's been good, and maybe it hasn't been good. So those kinds of comments, we try not to make it real negative. We really want more informative information from these people, but there are people who know a candidate personally and can fill in a little more information about that person. So then we have the caucus, and everybody turns in their ballot. Every member has a ballot, and we count the ballots. And as I said, a candidate has to receive 51% of the votes to achieve our endorsement. And then we go out. Usually we try, it gets kind of late sometimes, like around 9 or 10 o'clock. We usually meet at the San Rafael City Council chambers because it's all set up beautifully for our type of meeting. And we always have a videographer there who videotapes the whole thing, not the caucus part, but the actual meeting, and we do post that on our website. So it's a process that we've been doing for years. It seems to work, and because like I said, the questionnaire is time-consuming, and we appreciate that. We've tried to make it a little bit simpler than it used to be. It used to be you had to write a lot of essays, so we calmed it down a little bit. And then the deal is, once we have our list of candidates that we're endorsing, we put that on our web, and we also send it out to the press. And people want our endorsements, so that to me is a sign that our organization is respected and taken seriously.
She served as chair from 1996 to 2002. She's also been a delegate to the State Democratic Party. She's worked for the state legislature, serving 2 California State Assembly members since 2002 and 2014, between 2002 and 2014. And she also has been a successful political manager, and consultant, representing dozens of local and state candidates and ballot measures.
If you can't see me, that's just fine. And actually, I've been watching The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, so I feel like I need to do a stand-up. Anyway, thanks for getting the slides up there. So after listening to all of this, I find myself wanting to talk about getting an endorsement from the North Bay Neighbor Council. And I love hearing Ken talk. You're just great. And he is right. We did have to pull that endorsement. That's always hard to do. So I have slides. I'm also going to have handouts. They're going around, I see. And I'm going to talk more about what it's like to run for office. The North Bay Labor Council does our own training, and I do a piece called Y'all Ready for This? Because if you haven't done it, you have no idea what it's like to do. And there's so much going on in the world now. We all are feeling it, and it can be an emotional drain. A lot of what's going on in the world, the climate change, the Israel conflict, all of that is disturbing. And so we think, okay, well, that's out there, elected office, I don't really have to deal with it. But you've been hearing about these Zoom bombings, very racist, anti-Semitic comments coming into local meetings. The Sonoma County Board of Supervisors turned off Zoom, so you can't make a comment on Zoom, and now they're showing up. So it's really stressful. So I want to be sure that everybody's keyed into what that is. And Suzanne emailed me and said, so here's what I'm covering. I don't want to overlap. And I thought, oh, thank God she's covering that stuff. I can cover this. So, okay. So running for office, it says really examine why, because it's not easy. Next slide. Why do I want to run? So things not to say. Because I want to help people. Because I care. Because I want to make a difference. Now those are all good things. But by themselves, they don't say anything. They don't tell anybody what you're doing and why you're there. So you've got to really look at what's important to you. Ask yourself the questions, what is my deepest issue? Did you work on a community issue that people know you for? Try to focus in on that, because that will give you an answer that is uniquely you. And you can't just say, superfluous things that don't define you. You need to get out there. How much money will I need? Depending on your race, if it's a small school board race or city council, someone should help you figure that out. It's a extrapolation of how many registered voters in your district, and then someone should go and someone will, you'll find somebody to do this. Take a look at similar races, like this year, 2024 is a presidential race, so perhaps might want to look at the last presidential race and the one before that and average it out and get a sense of what you're going to need. And also how many votes it takes to win. Talking about questionnaires, it's just an aside, but on the questionnaire, our questionnaire asks you how many votes do you think you need to win. And I've gotten answers like a lot. 50% plus one, which everybody knows. No, that's not what I meant. Do you have a sense of what you're shooting for? We want to know that you have that. Can I raise that much money? You need to start looking at, and this is some of the stuff is in the handout. Your inner circle, which is family. Those are always the first people you get money from. Your closest friend, which is your next circle, and start hitting up them for money. If you belong to organizations, Planned Parenthood, other women's groups, environmental groups, if you're part of that, you want to ask them for money. If sometimes, not always, but sometimes previous elected officials will share their donor list. Sometimes they won't actually share the list, they'll mail to it for you. Because they just don't want to give it out, but these are all ways to raise money. Next slide. Should I put any of my own money into the race? That's a really serious question you need to ask yourself. Now, some people like to see that you've put some money in, so you've got some skin in the game. $1,000, $1,500. Do not mortgage the house to pay for your race. Really bad idea. Or first of all, it doesn't look good. But secondly, if you lose, you're stuck. I mean, you could maybe have a retire the debt party, but you really need to look at that. A little bit of money, got some skin in the game, that's good. Don't, I've actually made that mistake, so don't do it. Is my family on board? And you should know that when I do this, y'all ready for this, at our training, I had several people come up to me and say they almost walked out after my thing about how hard it is, and that, that's good. I mean, that got through them. One guy, it was a 2-day training. One guy brought his wife the second day because I said you got to have your family on board, and they also need to know how hard this is. You need to actually assess all that first, I would say, before you throw your hat in the ring. Next slide. Do I have a solid support system? That's all of the same thing, because you need, and I'm not talking about money here, I'm talking about people who will have your back, because it's really hard to do. If you got kids, somebody who will watch your kids. If you just have a really bad day, somebody who will listen to you complain. That's the kind of stuff that you need. Do I have time, and will I need to take time off from work? Previous, I think it was in my bio, previous to working for the legislature and the job I have now, I was a campaign manager and a consultant. And I always wanted my candidates to take some time off, even if it's just the last month or 6 weeks, because it really does become intense and requires so much of your time and focus. So that's something else you need to assess. Next slide. What is my base of support? We kind of already talked about that, but you want to think about who you can draw from. Like I mentioned earlier, did you work on a previous community issue? People from there. Like-minded people, people from organizations that belong to, do you belong to the PTA? Those are kinds of places you can draw from. Do I have the passion and stamina for the long haul? Yeah. Because it's hard. It doesn't even matter if you're running for just a little school board. It's tough. And so assess how important it is to you, and if you're ready for that, and what kind of help will I need? Yeah. So Ken mentioned that some of the smaller races won't have a consultant, but the consultant is the person who will write your plan. Figure out how many doors you need to hit, figure out how much money you need, The manager is the person who will put that plan into action. I have been a consultant. My partner likes to say that I was a hybrid consultant because I did a lot of consultant stuff, but I also did campaign manager stuff. I would figure out the campaign strategy and do all that stuff, and then I would go knock on doors with the candidate. Not usually what a consultant does. But if you can find somebody who could do both of those things, that will help. Because you do really need somebody who's done this before that can help you figure out all the details. Volunteer coordinator is, now that's usually a non-paid position. Sometimes people want money, but that's a really important person to have, because if you're like me and you get annoyed really easily, you need to have somebody else dealing with those volunteers, because it's, there's tons of them. And, if you want to arrange door knocking, phone banking, somebody can call those people on your list that I mentioned before and try to sign them up for times where they can come and walk and phone and do all of that. But it's really hard for the candidate to do all of that. So even if you have a completely volunteer manager, volunteer coordinator, if you've got people who believe in you and can give you that time, try to find those folks, because it's very time consuming. So the role of the candidate, you be you. And what Ken said, if you're not authentic, people are going to see that. And I meant to put it in here, but I forgot. I used to be a speechwriter for the people that I worked for in the legislature. And I always tried to tell them that most people are not going to remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. How many times have you done that? I saw this great speaker, he's great. What did he say? Oh, I don't know, but it was really great. So, that's what you've got to carry with you. The role of the candidate is three things: money, votes, endorsements. There's also a fourth that, you need to study the issues. You can spend some time studying the issues, but if you're not doing something that does one of those three things, money, votes, and endorsements, because endorsements also translate into votes and money, then you need to have somebody else do it. That has to be the mantra in your head: money, votes, and endorsements. Next slide. Am I doing on time? Okay, and now I get to talk about endorsements like everybody else. And why are they important? They're incredibly important. Your endorsements will help people to know what your core values are. If you're endorsed by the realtors, if you're endorsed by environmental groups, people are going to see. Now, endorsements are, like, when I'm looking at candidates, like the most important thing to me. And they're the fastest way to find out who your candidate is. Sometimes when I'm really busy, I don't have time to do anything else, I'll look at those endorsements. And that pretty much tells me everything I need. As far as the Labor Council, and the North Bay Labor Council covers Sonoma, Marin, Lake, and Mendocino counties. So we do candidates down here. And when Ken was talking about the number of candidates, we've got a lot of candidates in those 4 counties. We don't give you an hour when you come to us. You get 20, 25 minutes. One of the gifts of the pandemic was the Zoom world. Now somebody who's way out in Lake County we don't have to travel, we can do it on Zoom. It's not as good. I'd rather interview candidates in person, but Zoom works fine. But they will tell you, tell people who you are. And they also will often translate into money, as Ken has mentioned, and they will also translate into feet on the ground. So they're incredibly important. One thing I will say about endorsements is, don't wait until they come to you. I'm always impressed as the political director of the North Bay Labor Council when a candidate calls me and says, "Hey, I'm interested in your endorsement. What's the process?" We contact everybody, and we go through all the files, we find out who the candidates are, who's pulled papers, and we send them a questionnaire. But I'm always really impressed when somebody says, "Hey, what's your process? I'd like to participate. It shows me some, some eagerness. And also, as Ken said, don't come in there, there's nothing I hate more than somebody who hands in a questionnaire that we ask them about PLAs, Project Labor Agreements. Well, I don't know, I'm gonna have to study more about that. Why didn't you study something and put something on the questionnaire? I mean, it's like, how hard is that? I understand, and I think later I have a slide about questionnaire hell. It's really hell. I mean, everybody and their brother sends you a questionnaire. Some group that was born on the third Thursday and wears purple will send you a questionnaire. I mean, it's gotten ridiculous. And I've been a candidate, so I know what that's like. It's really awful, and you need help to fill out these questionnaires. Don't feel like you got to sit down and do them all by yourself. I had somebody do them for me. I checked them, I edited them, I changed them, but that's my word. If I was going to do every single questionnaire, that's all I would do. So you absolutely need to have help with that. Okay, some of the hard stuff. It is a 24/7 commitment, even in some of the smaller races, especially when you get to the end. Also, when I say get to the end, understand that absentee ballots drop about a month before Election Day. So Election Day is really the day the absentee ballots drop. Mostly everybody's voting absentee these days. Not me. I like to go to the polls. It's just a thing, but most people vote absentee. You won't get a lot of sleep. You'll be, even when you're trying to sleep, you'll be thinking about the campaign and what's going on. Questionnaire hell. There it is. Am I right? It's just horrible. And this is why a lot of people wanted to leave the room after I did this in our training. But really understand that you cannot sit down and do them by yourselves. When I hear a candidate say, "Well, no, I just couldn't get," what do you mean you couldn't get to it? Give it to somebody. Let somebody look. And I'm going to tell you a story about. I don't want to say the candidate's name, but it's a very well-respected candidate. Couldn't get to fill it out. Well, I'm just so busy. I know, but get somebody to do it for you. Because our policy is you have to fill out a questionnaire and you have to sit for an interview, or you don't get an endorsement. And then it finally came where she said, okay, so she's a female, that I just can't do it. I know that means you're gonna, and I said, no, what's the problem? I mean, you're our candidate. Just fill out the damn thing. I mean, don't even do it all. Just, and then, so finally, she had somebody do it for her, which was fine. And in our interview, Jack Buckhorn, who I work with, God love him, said, "Why was it so hard to get you to fill out your questionnaire?" And that would have been a good time to say, well, I was really stressed. That was then. This is now. Here we are. She went back to talking about how stressful it is. Oh my God. I mean, don't complain to the people who are trying to help you. Bad idea.
In all fairness, it's a really hard questionnaire.
Oh, our questionnaire? Yeah, it is, and it's long, and I've tried to cut it down, and it's a pain in the ass. But you got to give it a shot. I mean, one sentence answer, but you got to give it a shot. When I was a candidate, I made the mistake of having. I had a questionnaire that ended up being 42 pages long because I went nuts. And I'll tell you something: the people reading those questionnaires do not want to have to spend a lot of time doing that. So don't give 2-page answers like I did. Don't do that. Okay, everyone is an expert. Oh my God, this is if everybody will come, tons of people will come up to you and say, "This is what you need to be working on. This is what you need to be thinking out." Oh my God, it's crazy. And again, I don't have a lot of patience. So I mean, one more person said that to me, I was going to have to slap them. But so you need to deal with that, and you need to pace yourself. Understand that people mean well, but I mean, people think that being an elected official is an easy thing to do, and here's what you need to focus on. Well, no, you need to focus on it all. And I like to say to people when they ask me why I got into politics and why I'm in politics, because I say that I got into politics because I was passionate about one thing and I ended up caring about everything. And, you know, that's the way you do it. You know, everybody has their own issue and they think that's the most important thing. You need to understand that, you know, yes, I hear you, and, you know, there's a lot of things to think about. Have somebody, a volunteer or a staff person, come and get you away from that person, but it'll happen all the time. You're now a public person. No more of this private stuff, no more going out with, you know, wearing sweats that are all dirty and spotted and stuff, and, you know, when you go to the grocery store, now you need to look a little different, act a little different. You're a public person now. It's not called public office for no reason. You have to be on all the time, pretty much. You know, people stop you in the grocery store and ask you questions. You kind of have to be on. And you'll spend a lot of time away from home. Those are all things to consider. Next slide. We've already gone over this. If you're in a relationship, make sure your partner is on board, but also decide early if your partner is going to be part of the campaign or not. And make that decision between the two of you, because, you know, sometimes partners want nothing to do with it. Or sometimes they say they want nothing to do with it, and then as the partner, you know, gets going, they say, oh, wait a second, I think you need to do this. So that should be, those boundaries should be set early. You have to deal with negativity. People will say nasty things about you, and it'll be in the press, and you won't like it. You need to learn how to let that go, and your ego needs to be, you know, ego gets a bad rap, but it needs to be healthy. You need to be able to stand up to that. Decide on signs early. Ken, I gotta disagree with you. I think signs are important. When you talk about name recognition and people throwing away that thing, that sign is there every day they drive by it. And so, but I'm saying decide early because people love signs. Okay? If somebody supports you, maybe they may not have money to give you, lots of money, or they may not have the time to walk, but they can stick a sign in their yard and feel like they did something for you. So they're important to those people. And it'll drive you nuts if you don't have signs. Everybody calling you saying, where are your signs? Oh my God, it's crazy making. I was on a campaign once that I was working. They just decided they weren't going to do signs because they probably thought they don't matter. Signs don't vote, yes and I know. And signs don't win elections. But how do you know that? Because, you know, they say polls say signs don't win elections, but how do you ask that question? Who's going to answer a poll saying, yeah, I voted because I saw a sign? Nobody's going to say that. And the name recognition is the big, you know, if somebody sees that, drives by that every single day, it's kind of plugged into their brain. But people will call you, and, you know, but those people who want to stick a sign in their yard and that's all they can do, they'll call you and drive you nuts. So just get some signs. Next slide. Yeah, understanding the difference between an activist and an advocate, huge thing. If you are running for office, or let's say you started out, I don't know, being an environmental activist, and you know, or a labor activist, and you've been out there like me, you know, and tense, holding that bullhorn, yelling at everybody, and now you're going to run for office. You have to shift a little bit. It can be subtle. But a lot of people do not understand the difference, and it's important to do that. If you're going to run for office, and you know, and you've been an advocate, you have to make that shift. And the thing is that when you are elected, and Holly, you know this, when you are elected, you're not just representing the people who voted for you and the people who support you. You're representing everybody. And you need to act like that. Next slide. Okay, here's some of the good stuff. I always like to end with this. You'll make a lot of friends and find like-minded people. Campaigns are amazing. There's energy. There's so much energy. All these people fighting for the same thing. And you'll meet people who care about all that stuff, and that's pretty cool. You'll meet so many people who really believe in you. and really just go all out for you. It's a great feeling. Next slide. When you have a good day walking, you get a lot of positive feedback, phoning, you have a good foreman, there's nothing like it. It feels great. When you've had a really good day and you go home feeling like you really accomplished something and people really care about you and people really want you to lead them, it's a great feeling. You'll overcome fears. Public speaking, that's the #1 fear for most people. You gotta get over that if you're running for office. So how many people here are running for office? Okay. So you need to get used to standing up in front of a crowd and talking to them. There's all kinds of tricks that tell you to picture everybody with no clothes on, but you just need to get over it. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. You'll learn even more about what really matters to you. In the very beginning of this, we talked about why are you running? And you'll say a few things, but by the time you get to the end, it might change. You might find there are issues you didn't consider, things that end up really being important to you. Like I said, I got in because I was passionate about something and ended up caring about everything. So that's a positive. You'll learn what you're made of and how much you can do, how much you can put up with. You sure will. You'll learn so much about yourself. It's incredible. Next slide. The end. For candidates, and when we did our training, we did it. I tried to focus it not just towards candidates, but also people who want to work on campaigns, so that there would be a trained pool of volunteers when those candidates launch their campaigns. When you do this, you'll find out what really matters to you. I think there was something on the slide that I missed, that you do have to accept that you could lose. That's always tough. But in a race, there's a winner and there's a loser, maybe more than one loser. And so you have to be ready for that. You have to be able to withstand that and decide if you want to go for it again. A lot of people do. That's how you get name recognition. You run for office. But could you back that last slide for a second? I really like that because that's like, yeah, I'm done. And you'll learn so much. So next slide again. So again, stay in touch. I have cards, but my handouts also have all of my contact information. Please get in touch with the North Bay Labor Council. We want to hear from you. It is a bear of a questionnaire, I know, but it's worth it because we'll work for you. And just one last thing on the endorsement process. We end up endorsing like more than 50 candidates, and we can't do the same amount for every one of them. So we usually choose priorities, and those are the races that are really important to us in a specific area that really matters. But we will work for you. We'll give you some money, and good luck.
Okay, our next speaker is Susanna Marzek. Susanna is a lifelong community organizer, and she was in the field for Obama for America. She's been a consultant for elected officials and managed multiple successful regional campaigns. This work led to her careers in local government and ultimately the White House under President Barack Obama. Really exciting. Most recently, she was a strategist for newly elected Supervisor Mary Sackett. So, Susanna Marzek.
I am Susanna Marzek, as everybody just heard. And it says on the agenda that we're going to talk about volunteers, but really we're going to talk about grassroots organizing. And one of the things that I noticed, and you guys probably heard across the board, is every single person here, with the exception of the MIJ, mentioned how important it is to knock on doors, and that is grassroots organizing. So we're going to get into the different parts of grassroots organizing. It's not, I believe, it's my personal belief that it's not who you know, it's not your endorsements, although that's a big part of it. And it's not your social media influence, right? It's about face-to-face contact and touching other people at the door, over the phone, or even at a tabling event, being out in the community, right? And it's about defining your message, amplifying your message, and then getting the feedback, okay? And there's 3 parts that I want to go over, and that is identifying, recruiting, and developing a leadership pipeline. And we just talked about this in the last part, but it's about building a core team. It's about building people who you trust, who trust you, and who you feel can represent you out there in the world. And the second part is building community around that leadership. So the idea would be that these people would go out and talk about what we can do for the community, what the campaign can do for the community, how the community can benefit from this campaign. And the third part is building power around the resources of that community. So once you have identified people in the community and identified the leadership in the community, you need to call on those resources. So you have your VIPs, you have your HOA presidents, you have people who have their own networks. And then you're basically using their networks to spread your message, right? So that's a big part of it. Next slide. So I like to say grassroots organizing is organizing yourself out of a job. That is the biggest part of being a grassroots organizer, is finding jobs for everybody so that you no longer have to do it. And especially as a candidate, it's super important, as we just talked about, that we need to shove everything off onto other people so that we can concentrate on the things that are important. So the first part that we are going to talk about is the what, which is the story of self. I have a handout for everybody about developing your story of self. But the first part is the story of self, then how you're going to recruit and train volunteers to tell your story, the ways that you're going to amplify your message through your team, how to get your supporters out on election day, and the mechanisms for organizing all the data that you're going to pick up in the field, which is a lot of data. So the story of self. This we just sort of briefly went over about defining what your critical message is, right? So everybody remembers, at least for me, if you're a Democrat, if you're a hardcore Democrat, you remember where you were when you heard Barack Obama's 2004 DNC speech, right? That was such a powerful, incredible speech where he talked about how he was a child of a single mother growing up in the south side of Chicago, and why he felt like he was called to service as a community organizer, right, in that community. That is his absolute message. We all know it. And we knew when we saw it that he was going to be great. And so your story of self will be your tight working message that you are going to tell 1,000 people that you meet, probably more. It's going to be at the supermarket, not in sweatpants, apparently. It is going to be...
Dirty sweatpants.
Yeah, not dirty sweatpants. It is going to be at the door. It's going to be over the phone. It's going to be to your friends and your family. You're going to practice this message over and over and over again. And it's going to happen in 3 working parts. The story of self, right? A little bit about your bio, why you've been called to serve, what is a moment that formed your values, and what qualifies you to be here, right? So that is the first part of your story of self. The second is the story of us. So what are you going to do for your community, right? Why is it important that you represent your community, that you step out as a leader for the community that you want to serve, right? And then the third part is the story of now. So it's building a sense of urgency about what is happening in this moment and what's making it so urgent. So why were you called to serve ties greatly into the sense of urgency of you were in a place, you saw a need in your community where there was a loss or there was a marginalized population, or it could be one single moment that happened to you, but that's going to tie into why you need to run now, why it's important for you to be here now. And I will pass out that worksheet afterwards. And so now that you have your message, right, and you've practiced it 1,000 times and you could say it to the wall, you are going to build a team that's going to go out and do your message, right? It is going to be your core community first, right? Your friends, your family. It's also going to be potentially your place of worship, community groups, coalitions. Those are the people that you want to call on. It doesn't necessarily even have to be people that you know. You can introduce yourself, especially if they are maybe a community organizer that you already know, or somebody who's run a campaign before, or somebody who's worked on a campaign before or volunteered. That is your core community. And then it's about setting up phone calls and in-person meetings. Nope, I'm going to curse here, okay? Because I'm a New Yorker at heart. Nobody wants a fucking email, okay? Right? Nobody wants to be asked to do something really important through email, right? You want to call them, you want to get coffee, you want to spend time with people that you're going to be asking to spend a lot of time working for you, right? It's important. So you can set up Zooms, acceptable, I suppose, but that is what that's the idea. And then you have to have a role in mind. I think when we were talking about having a volunteer coordinator, that is a really important thing. That's somebody who's going to take a lot off your plate. You're obviously going to have a campaign manager, but you're going to want a volunteer coordinator. You're going to want somebody who is a good writer, who can fill out endorsements, questionnaires, who can write press releases, who can write LTEs, or letters to the editor. You need that person. So when you are talking to this person, have the role in mind. This is what I see you for, and this is how we're going to get there together, okay? And then you're going to tell your story because you've been practicing it so much, right? And you're going to get in there and you're going to tell your story about why you're doing this, and you're going to compel them to want to work for you. And then the next part is called the hard ask, which is just like a 5-point thing that I kind of came up with about why it's so important to make that hard ask. It's not, so what do you think? Do you think, are you interested? It's, I need you to do this for me, and here's how I need you to do it, and can I count on you, right? Same way you're going to ask for money. It's the same way you're going to ask people at the door for their vote. It's the same thing you're going to do asking a volunteer to be on your campaign. Okay, so here's the hard ask. Know your audience. What are their motivations, right? Are they a former campaign manager? Are they your mom, right? Are they somebody who is involved with labor, or it could be a high school friend that you haven't talked to in a really long time. Know what their motivations are. Are they motivated to help you? Are they motivated to get campaign experience? Are they motivated to learn more about you and what you stand for? Do they like to walk? That's an important one. The second one is building urgency. So you need them now. Right, I really need you to jump on the campaign now because we have a lot to do, we have a lot to cover, I can catch you up, can you be here for me on this date, right? And then asking for something specific like we talked about before, having a role in mind is really important. And then being quiet, right? So listen, what do they want to hear? What do they want out of the campaign? What is their goal for everything? And then if they can't give you a commitment, that's fine, but remain persistent, keep in touch, right? Maybe another cup of coffee, maybe another phone call, maybe another Zoom, right? Keep in touch and be consistent if this is the person that you really want, because it'll pay off. All right, this is going to be the longest portion that I talk about because it is the most important. So this is how you are going to, once you have your team ready to go, you're going to put these people to work. This is the big how-to of how to organize yourself out of a job. First is door-to-door. So face-to-face contact with the candidate. Somebody who knows the candidate is ideal. So going out there, knocking on doors is important. Every candidate should be setting a target goal to reach as many of the voters in their target district as possible. It is clear that it's the most intimidating option out of phone calls, out of emails, out of text messages. But it's the most important because once a candidate sees you and gets to know you, oh, I saw your sign somewhere, or oh, I read this article about you, or I saw the letter to the editor. That's the connection. They put those two things together, and they're way more likely to vote for you than if you never showed up at their door. There are studies done by the National Institute of Health that say that if you can get face-to-face contact with somebody at their front door, and grassroots organizing in particular, you raise the voter turnout by 6 to 10%, right? That is a huge margin, and that's why it's critically important. In the old days, we used to go around with voter rolls and a clipboard, and it really sucked. because you would have to manually input all of that information into an Excel spreadsheet and then find somebody who knows how to do Excel. Gratefully, you don't have to do that anymore. There are organizations and companies that will aggregate all this information for you and then allow you to access it. So if you have a consultant, that is probably a part of the package for your consultancy. If you do not have a consultant, you're going to want to look at PDI, political data intelligence, or you're going to want to look at like VAN, for instance. So VAN is what we used on the Voter Action Network, is what we used on the Obama campaign. It's a little bit older. They use a scanner to scan a barcode for each voter. But PDI is fully integrated onto cell phones and onto an app. So what all you have to do is, let's say you want to go into District 1 and you only want the Dominican neighborhood. So you can put a circle around the Dominican neighborhood. It'll populate all of the female Democrats over the age of 60, if that's what your target audience is, right? And then you can populate it and send it out to your volunteer. And your volunteer can basically take their cell phone, knock on doors, and then right then and there say who they touched, who they talked to, if they voted for you, right? It's seamless. There is a learning curve on it, but there's plenty of people here who know how to use it and can help you. The next part is that volunteers knocking on doors can reach 100 doors a day, right? Knocking on 100 doors a day. That is huge. If you can get a volunteer to do that and you trust them, I don't always trust all the volunteers, and you can figure out really quickly who is good at their job and who is not, who is capable of talking to a volunteer and who is not, right? For those people, there's lit drops. Lit drops can do 500 doors a day, right? And that is where having the endorsement of firefighters is huge, because they have teams of people that go out and they blast whole neighborhoods, and it's a beautiful thing. So, but my recommendation, and we'll go over this, is that candidates need to be focused on doing 100 doors a day on the weekends or whenever, 2-3 months out of the campaign, especially if they're already targeted voters. So phone banks. Phone banks are fun. You can get the gang together. You can have a wine and cheese, a pizza party. You can do it over Zoom, right? You can get 5 friends together, and you can sit there, and you can ask each other questions, and you can play off of each other. And you can unmute yourself and talk about the crazy person you just talked to on the phone, right? There's lots of fun anecdotal stories that I could tell you about doing phone banks, but it works. On the Obama campaign in 2008, I was a regional field organizer, and I had created a coalition of 10,000 volunteers. I had gone out into communities, I had put all of these people together, I had gone to church meetings and community organizing meetings, and people who were already built into the process. I found these 10,000 volunteers, and then on the last 4 days of the campaign, which is GOTV and a presidential, then before the paper ballots, the last 4 days of the campaign, my 10,000 volunteers made 1 million phone calls into swing states. 250,000 phone calls a day into swing states. I'm not going to say we won the campaign, but it was a huge feat, and it was by far the most of any other organization in the country. So, phone calls can be important, okay? And then candidates should be making phone calls, right? If you don't want to walk, if you can't walk, if you feel like it's not the right thing for you, be on the phone. Be targeting phone calls. Email, targeted weekly phone calls. Again, I'm not a big believer in email, but I still think that you should have targeted weekly emails or bi-weekly emails that you can get out to people who are your supporters. Text banking is a new thing for me. I just recently was on Mary Sackett's campaign, and we worked with a consultant to text everybody in the district who we targeted. So all the Democrats who had voted in off-year elections, we targeted them, and then we had a team of 4 or 5 people who were willing to sit on the other end of those text messages. 300 text messages would go out at a time, and then you would sit on the other side of it with pre-populated answers. And every one of us was an ambassador for Mary Sackett, and we were allowed to answer the questions. If we had a really difficult question that we couldn't answer, Mary was available, or Julia, her campaign manager, was available, that we could do this. But you can do it for cents on the dollar, and it's a really good way to just blast everything out and get feedback. Social media, we went over last time, but I recommend hiring a millennial. I mean, they are the ones who know how to use, get a high school student to volunteer on your campaign and have them, give them access to Canva and have them take a picture of you and put it up on the internet and just be working with those younger voters. I don't think, the young population unfortunately doesn't really vote, but if that is that's your target audience, then yeah, go for it.
You said to hire who?
A millennial.
Oh, a millennial,
Yeah.
yeah, of course.
Then the other ways to do public engagement are house parties. So if you have somebody who has a really cool house, they can throw a backyard barbecue, right? You can do tabling outside of an event. We did some tabling outside of the farmers markets. You have to get permission from AIM to do that, and they basically give you a certain spot that you can stand in, but we did that in the last couple months of the campaign. Having your sign team, I know signs don't win campaigns, but they are branding, right? So when people see your name on their neighbor's lawn in their neighborhood they really like, oh, if that person's voting for him, maybe I'll vote for him, right? It's important. And so having a sign team, when you are putting it back to door, if you're at somebody's door and they say, I love you, I love Susanna, I'm running for office, I love Susanna. Well, that's awesome. Would you like a sign? Yes. Now you have a sign team, and you can connect a sign team with that person, and you can put it on their lawn. And next is a corner team, holding signs up on a corner. Again, branding, high traffic areas. And then something that's new to me is letters to the editor. This is the first campaign I've ever been on where we had a specific person who volunteered themselves to be a letter to the editor coordinator. So they took the candidates' contacts, their leaders, their VIPs, and they wrote letters for each of these VIPs. And they sent them out and they said, would you send this to the MIJ, or can I send this to the MIJ on your behalf? We sent probably 15 letters out every week. Every week we sent one letter out, and we probably got 10 out of 15 published. Because the MIJ is looking for space, apparently, right? And so every week we had somebody endorsing that candidate. That people who read print media, which tends to be also voters because they're in an older generation, it's a great way to get your name out there. And it's a great way to say, oh, you're HOA president, or the head of the firefighters, or the head of the Sierra Club. Whoever it was writing. And you can hit all those targets.
Can I ask a question before you go on? I am not convinced that phone banking works anymore.
Okay.
It used to, in the olden days, but
2008.
well, no, even in 2008, people are not. I mean, yeah,
Yes.
but that is kind of the olden days in politics,
Sure.
But people don't answer their phones anymore.
Yeah.
They have answer machines. If they don't recognize the number, they won't answer it.
Yeah.
And it just feels like it's kind of losing.
Sure.
And it's a value. I think text banking is a great thing,
Yeah.
and that we should try to work on. I'm not convinced that phone banking works anymore.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's valid. I also think that if you have people who really want to volunteer and they're maybe not good on computers and they can't walk, that phone banking is great.
I know, but you know as well as I do that you can call 100 numbers and maybe talk to one or two people.
Sure.
Now, maybe in 2008 was different, but that's what I'm finding.
Yeah, in 2008 they told us to
Yeah.
shove off
Yeah.
because they had been called 17 times.
Yeah.
But I think those numbers are higher, because I did a whole bunch of phone banking last year for key states, and mine was 3 out of 10, you answered the telephone, which was surprising to me.
Uh-huh.
But and those
Yeah.
people who answered
Maybe they had a better
were
list.
receptive.
Yeah.
They might have had a better list than
Yeah.
some are better than others, and especially if it's a targeted list. And people give fake phone numbers. People give phone numbers from 10 years ago. Most people who are new to the country don't give phone numbers, right? So if you are trying to reach that population, you're probably better going into the community because they don't give their phone numbers.
Yeah, I don't think we had caller ID in 2008, so, because now people will not answer the phone if they don't recognize the number.
And I'm sorry, follow up on that, when you do phone banking, are you getting cell phone numbers at this point? Because I don't know if anyone even has landlines.
It's whatever the voter put in their registration, right? So if they put a landline, if they put their cell phone, it's a cell phone. Yeah. Okay, so, where are my LTEs? Okay, and then, I will say it's interesting, just as an anecdote. Going to Nevada, I go to Nevada before for every presidential, and I go to Reno and I knock on doors for 4 to 6 days because I'm a masochist. But I will tell you that Nevada is a very interesting place, and I wish California would do the same in that you can cure your ballots at the door. Right, so if a person doesn't sign it or you can't get a hold of them for whatever reason, you can walk up and have them sign their ballot or sign an affidavit, and it's over and you can return that. So I'm pushing for that for California. So one of the last parts is the get out the vote. This is something that I encourage every candidate to do, and I like to do too. Get a big whiteboard, get a big piece of white paper and art paper, and put a calendar together, right? Put the calendar together from now until the election. And I'm going to skip to step 3 really quick because first put in the benchmark dates, right? Put in the dates that you have a candidate forum, or you have a fundraiser that you're hosting, or you have something that is really, or election day, or GOTV, whatever it is, put those big dates in there. And then you want to, in there, also sub-add monthly and weekly goals. So if your goal is to knock on 50 doors a day because that's what you think you can do, then great. Then you need to put that in there and you need to put the total at the bottom. And then you need to follow that. And if you're hitting 35 one day, then shucks, it's going to be 65 the next. It's how you keep on track. It's how you keep your pace. It's how you keep the pace of your campaign moving. And so then you are going to create the strategy around meeting those goals, right? So how many canvas days do you need to hit the 12,000 voters that you're trying to hit, right? If you can count on people to do 50 to 100 doors a day, then how many days are you going to need, right? And how many volunteers will you need for each event, right? And then who will fill those roles, right? Who's going to schedule the events? Who's going to advertise and recruit for the events? Who's going to manage and acquire the material for the events? Those are all sort of things that you need to pin on somebody else. All right, and then now that you're in the process, or that we can go to the next one, after you have collected all of this incredible data, who's going to vote for you, right? Who's leaning towards you? Who's definitely not going to vote for you, right? You have all of this, and where does it go? So most of us, from what I've seen on small campaigns, use something called Nation Builder, right? Even MWPAC has used Nation Builder. And it's cost about $700 for the year. And I think, Tammy, that's right? $750. And then it basically allows you to organize your data and voter IDs, right? So you can bring a voter in and you can say, I know that this person is a core volunteer or is a core supporter or is somebody who's going to vote for me, somebody who wants to sign up for my emails, whatever it is. You can put it in there and then you can talk to them, right? You can talk to them by email, you can talk to them by text, you can talk to them, ask them for volunteer, right? This becomes your core space. It also has a dynamic email system which will populate everything into it for you, so you can just put the words in and it'll shoot out something for your campaign. So that is that. And then essentially that is the nuts and bolts of grassroots organizing. And I can't say it enough, and everybody already said it before me. It's all about grassroots organizing. It is all about getting on the ground and talking to people, right? And if you go to the next slide, across the board, you've got obviously Barack Obama, who is a community organizer, so he believes in community organizing. But it's politics from the bottom up, not the top down. So you're not asking for people up here to endorse you. You're asking people on the ground at their door to endorse you, which sometimes in aggregate can lead to bigger things. And then Eric Garcetti, who's the former mayor of LA, and he's now an ambassador, he says it again. And then Tom Comer, a hard right-wing Oklahoma Republican. All change starts with disarray at the grassroots level. If you are in politics, you need to know how to do grassroots. So, and I'm here to answer questions.
So our final speaker tonight is Ms. Rachel Farrock. She is a newly elected Novato City Councilwoman. Rachel grew up in San Rafael, where public service was a family-held value. Her father and brothers are firefighters. Her grandmother was a teacher. One grandfather was a mounted police officer, and the other was a union plumber. The Novato City Council appointed Rachel to the Novato Planning Commission, where she served for 2 years. The Board of Supervisors appointed Rachel to the Mental Health Board, where she authored a resolution and advocated for converting the Mental Health Board to a Behavioral Health Board. Rachel is passionate about environmental policy and met with members of Congress to discuss climate change. Rachel was elected to the Novato City Council last year in 2022. She lives in Novato and is raising her 2 children, Ethan and Amelia, with her husband Colin. Please welcome Rachel.
Thank you so much. It's so good to see all of you, and I just want to extend a thank you to the Marin Women's Political Action Committee for having me. And I congratulate all you for doing this training. It's so important to have leaders in our community that care. So I'm almost a year. So a year ago, I was actually running for office, and I grabbed the paperwork, and I did have a strong foundation because I did go to a similar training that you all are here today, and then I did the Emerge program, and the Emerge program teaches women how to run for office and win. So I felt like I had a really great foundation. I had all the best practices. I was ready to go. So I grabbed the papers, and what I did differently than a lot of other candidates is I didn't reach out to people I knew. I went door to door to strangers and said, hey, I want to run for office. I don't really have a platform yet, but will you give me a chance? Let me just at least get those 20 signatures. And that actually uplifted my confidence. I learned how to go door to door. If they said no, who cares? I'm just trying to get on the ballot. So actually no one said no, which was good. So that was kind of a good way to start off the campaign. So the second thing that I had to do was okay, who's going to actually help me do all these things? And through these different programs, they give you best practices, and you have to have, a financial firm doing your FPCC forms. And guess what happened to me? I called so many treasurers, no one would take me on because the race was small. So I had to think creatively, and my mom was very good at numbers, so she became my first person on my cabinet team. Then I reached out to people who I was friends with, that I trusted, that were interested in politics, and said, hey, help me. Everyone had busy lives too. But I would say a lot of it was, I leveraged Laurel a lot. She was my campaign manager, but don't tell her husband that. So I did, think creatively. And one thing that really worked was I found causes that were so important to me. And an example was I was the planning commissioner that voted no against the Costco gas station for environmental reasons. I leveraged that. And I had a whole environmental, climate change advocates that were there supporting. So I was I'm looking for volunteers or people to step up on my cabinet. I utilized them. So that's kind of how my cabinet constructed. I had to do a lot of it myself. I didn't do phone banking at all. Texting worked really well in my area. The door-to-door worked really well. And I set that stuff up. So a lot of it's on the candidate. Ideally, you want to have all these people, helping you out and stuff, but people have lives. It's a smaller race. It's not hey, I'm running for president, let's go. So it's trying to align your values with their values. And then one story I really like to tell was aligning with the environmental community. This one lady, never met her in my life. She sent me an email out of the blue. She came to every single walking session. She donated $500 and the max was $750. Like, I didn't even know her before. So I feel like if you align yourself with causes, you're gonna get a lot more positivity. One of the major elements I did very, very well at was the endorsement process. And I think one of the reasons was my first endorsement interview was with the Marin Professional Firefighters Association, and my dad was a firefighter. So that was like just easy. It felt like family. Like I knew so it was like this immediate bond. So that was the first one, and I was like, okay, that gave me the momentum, and I continued, and I got 18 organizational endorsements. So I feel like the endorsements really built my credibility being a new candidate, and I was in an extremely tough race because the opponent was grown up in Novato, had a business in Novato, extremely well known. So I did have an uphill battle at the beginning. With my endorsements, I think the most important thing is be authentic and really show you care. You're doing this for a reason, and share that with them. I see my endorsements as a relationship for life. Like, I consistently reach out to them. Marin Women's Political Action Committee, they endorse me. I'm always going to show up for them. SEIU needed help. I stepped up and helped them. I brought my 2 kids and we picketed at Kaiser because I want to show, they supported me when I needed it. I'm going to support them. So I think building that relationship and trusting relationship is really important. And also, if you do have maybe different policies and lines, having that open communication is really important with those initial endorsers to continue that relationship. But I think that's one of the things that really set me apart was my endorsements. I was lucky enough to have people that did house parties for me. That was extremely valuable. You get to have one-on-one conversations. And then also the endorsements of people in the community. So like Erin endorsed me, and that was very valuable because she was very much respected in Novato. So those little people. Dennis was actually the first supervisor that endorsed me, and I actually called him before I decided to run. I was like, do you think would you endorse me? And he's like, absolutely. And that changed my life. That was like, okay, I have people behind me to do it. And even though, you go through these trainings and you want this perfect setup, campaigns aren't like that. I feel like it's like one day you'll get a $750 donation, and then the next day you don't get, I didn't get the Sierra Club, and I was crying for 2 days about that, because that's one of the biggest policy items. It's a roller coaster. You'll have highs and lows, but at the end of the day, I feel like I actually have a poster up of all the things I promised my voters, and I make sure I'm at least moving the needle on it. I promise I do office hours. I had office hours on yesterday? It was Wednesday? Yeah. So I'm continuing to follow through with my promises because that's my value. I want to follow through on what I ran on and what I promised my constituents. What questions do you have? Or is there anything I want, yeah?
So you have a family.
Yes.
So how did everybody either participate, object? I mean, what was your experience with your family involvement?
So my mom and dad were actually pretty supportive. My mom, I was surprised, and she was my treasurer. She still is my treasurer. So that was really meaningful. My husband's from Ireland, and from Belfast, so Northern Ireland, where there's all this political drama. So he doesn't understand politics in Marin, and it's lower key, we're not gonna go to war. So that was a lot, he was like, what are you doing? So that was a little bit kind of just let me do this, it's okay. And then my kids, they actually loved it, like they loved walking door to door. They didn't want to leave the picket line, like I had to drag them and Ethan was crying. So like, I want to expose them to, you know, the good teachings of like sticking up for yourself and like having a voice. And so I think it's been good. I think, you know, I have a nanny now. I have to get a house cleaner for some things because I am busy. So it's like there's little adjustments you need to make when you're, you know, in office. And then I was appointed to the Transportation of Authority of Marin Commission, as well as the SMART Board. And then I'm on the countywide transportation plan for the county. So that's an ad hoc committee through TAM. So I'm doing a lot of extra stuff besides just the council. But I feel like my impact's, you know, going to be greater, especially for like families and seniors. One of the main reasons why I decided to run was there was no one on the council with kids younger than 30. So that was like a huge miss. And now we appointed someone who has kids, and it's so funny because we can be like, yeah, this conversation's a little off because they're not thinking about, you know, this demographic. So I think having a diverse voice at the dais is just very important. Yep.
As a candidate, how did you take not getting an endorsement like the Sierra Club? Is that something that makes you want to work harder towards that? Do you shun them? Do you...
No. Not over it. Actually, so the Sierra Club, I actually worked with them a lot on one of the food ordinance. So they're like, oh my God, we should have endorsed you. We made a mistake. And that felt really good because I was like, yes, I will always support the environment. Like, that's one of my major, and the police, too, Nevada police, like, they love me now. Because I've been like they see it, like I'm 100% responsive, or we'll say 99.9% responsive to anyone that reaches out. I set meetings, I have office hours, so I'm very accessible, and I think that speaks volumes. And I think I'm walking the walk in terms of what I said I'd do in the endorsement process, like SEIU and standing up for them and coming today, and you know, I want to do that for all the organizations that did support me. Yeah.
One of the things I was really impressed with during your campaign is that it was a difficult race. Mm-hmm. And like there was some negativity swirling. Your opponent was, you know, he had a lot of backers. And from what I saw, you really just let the negativity roll off your back. I saw you stay very focused and very positive, even when things were being said. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about your mindset and your ability to do that.
Yeah, there was, I mean, can you imagine your opponent saying something negative about you? No, but that happened, you know, they were bad mouthing. My number one thing when I started, I was like, I'm never gonna talk negatively about my opponent. And I think that built my credibility, because he was saying negative stuff about me, and I was just focused on how can we make Novato better? What can we do? What do you need? It wasn't about me or him, it was about the community. So I shifted, I think, that communication. And then I was just focused on like, okay, what's next on my to-do list to like what do I need? Like I set up my whole texting, I don't know how I did it, but I did all the texting myself, text speaking myself, because I didn't have enough like volunteers that were just like, it's hard to find people. So if I want, you know, I wanted to represent Novato, I, you know, cared about winning, and so I just stayed focused on like the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and now me and my opponent have a good relationship. And I think he's a fantastic, like he's a good person. He just kind of went negative, and I stayed positive, and I think that's where like the light shined. Yeah.
What's been your favorite thing that since being elected, like that you've been able to be a part of, or like what's something that you like really enjoy being a councilwoman?
I would say, so one of my biggest, or I'd say one of my weaknesses was speaking in front of people. Like I would get really nervous and stuff like that. So one of the things I actually wanted to do was work on public speaking and becoming a better public speaker. So that's something I like don't get nervous anymore. And so that was like, I guess a goal, like just a goal for me. I think the big thing is like, I'm really proud of responding to every single person that's reached out. Because they hear, and people say thank you. I didn't hear from all your other council members, not to put them down, but like that just is like, okay, good, like someone's listening. Like maybe they're probably busy doing something else for the city, but I can spend time and control, you know, that element. So, yeah.
So would you tell us, because you're a council member, I think you are on a lot of other things like League of California Cities. Are you involved in that at all?
No.
How does the mayors and council members associate?
Yeah, I have that lesson.
So it's sort of like when you think you're being elected to one office, there's so much more to do. Can you kind of describe that? You started to.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, so how the process, so there's a lot of boards and commissions. So when you get elected, there's like the TAM board, the SMART board, MCE, the Marin County Mayors and City Council board. So there's a lot of different ones. If you don't want to be involved with any of them, we have some council members on Novato that work and are just, they have hard jobs and don't have extra time to dedicate. They're not on any board. So they're just primarily doing Novato City Council and they're doing a great job. I wanted to extend myself a little bit and learn about different agencies. I went back to school and got my master's in public administration. So that I was like, oh, I think my knowledge that I learned there, and then I do government consulting for FEMA. So I was like, I can bring that knowledge and actually represent Novato at a high caliber because of my experiences. So you can kind of gauge how involved you want to be. You can like do tons of them. We have one council member that's a part of a lot of boards and commissions. So it's really what you want to make it. Yeah.
I just want to say, Maddie Hirschfield was
Yeah.
we were very proud to endorse you.
And I appreciate that so much. You have no idea.
Yeah. And I just want to vouch for her responsiveness, and you know, we know that we can always count on you. Do you have? You've only been there 2 years, but do you?
1 year.
Oh, 1 year. Okay. Have you like a proudest moment on the council that you've accomplished? It's okay if you don't. There you.
I've introduced 2 agenda items, which is tied with one other person on the council. So I feel like I'm being proactive. One is actually going to help renters with pets. So I worked with the Humane Society and leveraged their knowledge, and we'll get hopefully a $20,000 grant. But we were the first city in like the North Bay to get the Marin. It's the like Friendly Cities for Pet certification, and it's a nationally known recognition, and we obtained that, and that was just like an agenda item. And what I did with that is it was like not a controversial one, so I wanted that one to be my first. I put an agenda item that was very controversial. You might have seen it in the newspaper about blight buildings, because we have the worst in Marin, maybe all North Bay shopping center that is just disgusting, to put it nicely. So I wanted to come up with some type of policy to get them to actually meet with us. So I introduced that agenda item, and we talked about it at the strategic session. But what my agenda item did was now I have full conversation with the owner of that building, and we can make incremental progress on getting it a little bit better. And I'm building that relationship, so hopefully we can do something down the line so all those residents can benefit. So I see that as a win, even though like some of the business community was upset with it, but it was almost like a little bluff almost to get that to where it is. And now hopefully like I'm further than a lot of other individuals trying to pursue that. So.
Anyway,
Dennis, thank you so much. So, on behalf of the Marin Women's Political Action Committee, this is for you, this is for him. It's a certificate of appreciation. This award is presented to Supervisor Dennis Rodoni for sponsoring our Run to Win campaign training sessions and supporting our organization.
Scott?
Best picture of the day.
Ryan?
Thanks, Dennis. Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Me. I was like, oh, that was me. Vida? Jean? Wendy?
Uh-oh, someone might run against me.
Never.
We dig it.
Thank you. I've learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Another rising star.
Barbara?
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Miranda? And last but very not least, Christina.
Not taking my apron off either. Thank you very much. But she's taking her glasses off.
Take your glasses off.
You gotta get the apron.
Thank you.
Dennis, before you leave, can we take a group picture?
And then we're gonna just do one more. Perfect.
Sorority.
Yay!